So the coronavirus is here. It has fundamentally altered our way of life, our everyday existence. It's very likely to have a massive impact on the economy and really the well-being not only of our country, the United States, but also the world. And this is quite obvious if you just simply follow the news. One thing that's really caught my attention over the last couple of weeks is the extraordinary efforts and abilities of our medical professionals, our doctors, our nurses, and all of the individuals who are quite literally on the front lines of this war, which is basically what it is. And politicians have said this. In a way, yes, indeed, we are at war. The enemy is invisible. The enemy doesn't have guns, it doesn't have bombs, it doesn't have tanks or planes or grenades, but it's deadly and it's hurting us. And by us, I mean our collective humanity. So what is needed is an appreciation for the people on the front lines. The doctors, the medical professionals, the nurses. And in the context of Muslims in the United States, we know that there are tons of Muslims on the front line. And this isn't only important for the simple reason that Muslims are taking care of us, protecting us, saving us, treating us, healing us. All of those fundamental elements that are, immediate and in front of our faces, but we also need to remember, as a means of combating Islamophobia, that in many ways Muslims are part of the solution to a lot of the world's ills. A colleague of mine, Dalia Mogahed, said a couple months ago when we were sitting together on a panel, she said that Muslims are like a vital organ.
I don't mind questions. I love questions. It's the accusations that are tough. Today we hear people actually saying things like, there's a problem in this country and it's called Muslims. When are we going to get rid of them? So some people want to ban Muslims and close down mosques. They talk about my community kind of like we're a tumor in the body of America. And the only question is, are we malignant or benign? A malignant tumor you extract altogether, and a benign tumor you just keep under surveillance. The choices don't make sense because it's the wrong question. Muslims, like all other Americans, aren't a tumor in the body of America. We're a vital organ. Thank you.
So I also want to remind you that Muslims are indeed on the front lines. And if you pick up my book, Muslims in America, Examining the Facts, you'll notice that I have significant material in there, not significant, but a decent chunk, let me say that, on the exact number of American Muslim physicians in the United States. And this number amounts to about 50,000 persons, which is about 7% of all US physicians in this country. A national Muslim task force on COVID-19 has also sprung up in the last couple of weeks. Just recently, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, joined the task force and issued a joint statement which provided some additional guidelines for Muslim communities in this country. And these guidelines are really along the lines of guidance provided by the CDC, which is doing extraordinary work. Muslims in the United States and indeed North America should follow the guidance and make every effort to self-quarantine and social distance, just as pretty much everyone else at least should be doing in this country. Muslim community centers and places of worship have been virtually shut down, and one thing I've noticed on my social media are various Muslim leaders, imams, scholars, academics, and so on and so forth are holding, live seminar chats via whatever it might be, Facebook Live or Periscope or Instagram Live. So, This idea of practicing faith, it's still happening, perhaps in a very millennial 2020 type of way. People aren't necessarily going to the masjid to engage in their rituals and their prayers, but they're still engaging in religiosity and their faith. There was also a passage in the joint statement which I found to be really impactful and symbolic of kind of where we're at in terms of our common humanity. And the passage reads like this: "This is a time for unity across all boundaries, be they race, ethnicity, class, religious persuasion, or otherwise. To this end, numerous entities, including religious, civic, community, medical, and public health organizations, have come together to serve the educational, social, spiritual, and physical well-being of American Muslims and our society at large." This passage really captures that gray zone, kind of eliminating these imaginary differences that we have in our minds and kind of bringing us to a common platform. Rather than seeing this dynamic of us versus them play out, we see a common we develop. And I suppose this is one of the good things that comes out of something like a pandemic, right? Ideally, xenophobia, stereotypes, racism wither away, which they haven't, because we've seen a lot of coronavirus stereotype, hate crime type incidents happen with Asian Americans. But there is also, in addition to that, a camaraderie of humanity, this idea that we're all in this together. And again, Muslims are on the front lines combating this invisible enemy. I also want to bring to your attention a YouTube video that I created, which was based on a Newsweek article on how Prophet Muhammad would approach the quarantine. So check this out. I wanted to take a moment and share with you some recent social media activity that I've produced in the last couple days. One was a tweet that discussed Prophet Muhammad's approach to quarantining. And then the other is a Newsweek article that was published a few days ago. So I wanted to read a couple passages from the Newsweek article in hope that the content of this article might be informative and also reassuring. So we know that over 1,300 years ago, Prophet Muhammad was actually encouraging people to quarantine. And in addition to quarantining, staying hygienic, taking care of oneself, being clean as an individual, but also being clean in terms of organizing a community and society. While Muhammad was by no means a traditional expert on the matter of deadly diseases, he nonetheless provided sound advice in dealing with something like COVID-19. Muhammad said, and this is a direct quote, "If you hear of an outbreak of a plague in a land, do not enter it. But if the plague outbreaks out in a place while you are in it, do not leave that place." He also said, "Those with contagious diseases should be kept away from those who are healthy." Prophet Muhammad also strongly encouraged human beings to adhere to hygienic practices that would keep people safe from infection. Consider the following hadiths or sayings of Prophet Muhammad. 1. Cleanliness is part of faith. 2. Wash your hands after you wake up. You do not know where your hands have moved while you sleep. And 3. The blessings of food lie in washing hands before and after eating. Now, the heart of my Newsweek article focused on a story that was related in the 9th century by Persian scholar al-Tirmidhi. And the story goes like this. One day, Prophet Muhammad noticed a Bedouin man leaving his camel without tying it. He asked the Bedouin man, "Why don't you tie down your camel?" And the Bedouin answered, "I put my trust in God." The Prophet then said, quote, "Tie your camel first, then put your trust in God." So what was he encouraging here? He was encouraging people to, seek guidance in God or in religion in general. But he also hoped that people would take basic precautionary measures for the stability, safety, and well-being of all. So this video, I think, is important to consider because it links a lot of the current events, especially with Muslims, to their faith. How are Muslims responding to an issue like coronavirus, COVID-19, but how are they doing so in light of what their faith teaches them, right? Obviously, we have been dealing with a unprecedented disaster in many ways, but faith is such a key element to productivity, to constructive activities in our societies. And we often see religion getting a bad rep, but in a time of crisis like this, many people are clinging to their religion, but in a way that really, again, makes use of that gray space and that space of our common humanity. Some questions for you to consider. According to your own research, how have American Muslims responded to COVID-19 and the coronavirus? In light of the efforts that you have noted and documented yourself, what do these activities that you've read about, what do they say about larger, quote, Islamic values that we see playing out in American society and perhaps even the world? And thirdly, what interfaith initiatives, if any, have popped up in recent weeks in light of the coronavirus? So there are your three questions. Feel free to leave some comments or answers to those questions below in the comment section. You can also DM me. I look forward to hearing from you all. Please stay safe, wash your hands, self-isolate, quarantine, and most importantly, listen to those experts. Adios.